Ma'am, for the third time, we honestly can't understand what you're saying. The receptionist's voice was taut, his uneasy eyes darting toward the small crowd forming near the desk. In stark contrast, Naomi Takahara, an elegant Japanese woman draped in a sapphire coat, stood perfectly still, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Behind her, her assistant scrambled with his phone, cheeks burning with panic. What are we supposed to do now? A staff member whispered. The system confirms she reserved the Imperial Suite, but she won't respond in English, French, or even Cantonese. The tense silence cracked with the sharp cadence of heels striking marble. Clarissa Vance, the infamous sharp-tongued manager of the Atoria Grand Hotel, swept forward. Would her presence smooth over the chaos, or ignite it? Good morning, she said smoothly, placing both palms on the gleaming counter. I'm the general manager. How can we help you, ma'am? Naomi bowed slightly, then answered in Japanese, her tone soft yet steady. Clarissa leaned in, her voice slow, edged with condescension. This is America, ma'am. If you want service here, you'll need to speak English. A heavy quiet blanketed the lobby. No reply came. Clarissa's polite mask faltered, irritation seeping through. She's putting on a show, she muttered under her breath. Absolutely unacceptable. Whispers rippled among the guests. Watching from a distance, Daniel Hale felt the air sour, curdling into disdain. Clarissa gestured toward a nearby guard. File a formal incident report. Naomi's assistant rushed forward, voice trembling. Please, she is one of Japan's most esteemed executives. She's obstructing service in a 5-star establishment, Clarissa snapped. We can't waste time on riddles and silence. Naomi's fingers twitched faintly then stilled. Her silence wasn't defeat, it was iron. Daniel Hale placed the rag from his custodian's cart aside and stepped forward. What he did next froze the lobby. He bowed deeply, formally, precise, reverent. Then he raised his head, met Naomi Takahara's eyes, and spoke flawless, elegant Japanese. My deepest apologies for the inconvenience. Madam, how may I be of service? For a fleeting second, Naomi's composed mask shifted. Surprise, warm, fragile, lit her gaze, melting the tension. She responded softly in her native tongue, words flowing smooth as water. Daniel listened carefully, nodding, his comprehension clear. Turning to the stunned receptionist, he said, Mrs. Takahara would like to check in. The Imperial Suite. Here is her passport. The clatter of keys broke the silence. A moment later, a key card slid across the counter. The storm had passed. But later that night, in the manager's office, no calm remained. The air was cold, punctuated by the sharp tap of a fountain pen against oak. Clarissa Vance didn't look at Daniel. Her gaze drifted, lips curved into a cruel smirk. Mr. Hale, she began, her voice sugary, poisonous. That little performance today, unforgettable. She rose, her tone sharpening. But here's the problem. You overstepped. Don't forget your place. She flung a paper across the desk. Starting tomorrow, you'll be reassigned to basement storage and scrubbing grease traps in the kitchen. That's the true duty of a custodian like you. Daniel's jaw clenched. Anger flared, but he smothered it. For Charlotte, his little girl, he needed this job. He lifted his head, met Clarissa's eyes, and replied evenly, each word heavy with restraint. Understood, ma'am. He turned to leave, hand brushing the brass knob. But before he could open it, the heavy oak door swung wide. Naomi Takahara stood there, composed, motionless. Her assistant lingered behind, his face caught between confusion and alarm. She had come to thank the man who helped her. But the manager's venom had stopped her cold. She had heard it all. Clarissa's expression faltered before she quickly scrambled to recover. Mrs. Takahara, can I assist you? Naomi didn't answer her. Her eyes slid past Clarissa's crumbling facade and locked on Daniel. She inclined her head, then spoke in English this time, calm but sharp as a blade. Miss Vance, I couldn't help but overhear. Is it truly the policy of the Atoria Grand Hotel to punish an employee for offering kindness and professionalism to a guest? Staff passing in the corridor slowed, drawn by the tension. The air thickened. No, of course not, ma'am, Clarissa stammered, her voice brittle. This is simply an internal matter of discipline. Internal discipline? Naomi's brow arched, graceful and severe. You consider cultural empathy an offense? You deem assisting a guest grounds for punishment. Each question struck with precision, leaving Clarissa exposed before the very guest she had dismissed. The manager shrank under the weight of her own arrogance. Naomi turned from her without hesitation, her gaze softening on Daniel. The frost in her eyes warmed into genuine respect. "Mr. Hale, is it?" Caught off guard, Daniel gave a small nod. Naomi's lips curved faintly. "I would like to hear your story. If you could spare a moment, in the tea lounge, it would be my honor." Daniel answered quietly, "Of course, ma'am." And in that instant, the balance of power shifted. The most influential woman in the hotel walked side by side with the custodian, leaving the marble office for the quiet grace of the lounge. Daniel sat stiffly, palms pressed to his thighs, his gray uniform a stark contrast to the refined setting. Across from him, Naomi Takahara poured the tea herself. She waved off the hovering server, lifting the porcelain pot with both hands. With deliberate care, she poured a golden stream into a cup and slid it toward him. "Please," she said in Japanese. "Thank you," Daniel replied instinctively. Her smile hinted at amusement. Still in Japanese, she observed, "Your Japanese, it's flawless." Truly. It carries Kyoto's spirit. The cadence, the honorifics, the rhythm. Her words pierced deeper than she knew. Long-buried memories stirred. Daniel inclined his head slightly. "Yes, ma'am. I once taught cultural linguistics at Kyoto University. Long ago." "I suspected as much," Naomi said softly, as if confirming what she already knew. "Which leaves me wondering why." Her gaze searched his face. "Why would a man like you, once a lecturer at Kyoto University, accept this work and endure such treatment?" Daniel inhaled slowly, the bitterness of earlier still clinging to his tongue. Yet something about her presence seemed to draw out honesty. "I wasn't always a janitor," he began in a quiet voice. "When I first arrived, I worked at the reception desk. Thanks to my language ability, I thrived perhaps a bit too much. Manager Vance didn't like that. She resented the way guests, especially those from Japan, preferred to come to me. She saw it as a challenge to her authority. Eventually, she discovered a small mistake in my paperwork and used it as an excuse to demote me. She said it was either take a custodial position or lose the job entirely. With a young daughter to care for, I had no choice." Naomi nodded, sympathy flickering in her expression. She knew all too well the type of woman Clarissa was. "But that's only the end of the story," Daniel went on, his tone drifting, weighted with memory. "The real reason I left Kyoto, the reason I am here at all, is because of my wife." He stopped there, her memory pressing down on his chest until he could barely breathe. "Her name was Yumi," he whispered. "We met in Kyoto. I was a young lecturer full of ambition, and she was the soul of that city. Yumi taught me that language was never only words. It was the depth of a bow, the silence between phrases, the art of hearing what isn't spoken. With her, life was beautiful. We had a daughter together, Charlotte." At her name, a faint but genuine smile crossed his face. But then his expression faltered. Yumi became ill. So quickly, everything fell apart. When she passed, Kyoto was no longer home. Every street corner, every shrine, every cherry blossom, it all became unbearable. The lectures I once loved felt empty. I stood before students, but my spirit had already died with her. He lowered his gaze to his rough, calloused hands. "I was no longer a scholar, but a laborer. I looked at Charlotte and saw Yumi in her. I knew I couldn't be the father she deserved if I stayed drowning in sorrow. So I walked away. I gave up my professorship, left Kyoto, and returned here with one purpose: to give my daughter everything I could." He drew a steady breath. "This janitorial work, humbling as it is, gives me something academia never could: time. I can walk Charlotte to school each morning, pick her up after class, sit with her when she's sick. I traded my career for presence in her life, and I've never regretted that choice." The tea lounge was hushed. His words, love, loss, sacrifice, seemed to linger in the air. Naomi gently set down the teapot, a sigh slipping past her lips. Then, unexpectedly, her expression shifted into a playful smile. In halting English, she said, "Actually, my English, not very good." Daniel's head snapped up, shock written across his features. Her smile widened at his reaction before she returned to flawless Japanese, her tone lighter, almost relieved. "The truth is I want to speak English," she admitted. "But my skill is basic. Real communication in it drains me. So I turned it into a test." Daniel froze. Suddenly, the memory of the scene at the reception desk rearranged itself in his mind from a new angle. "Yes," Naomi confirmed, as if reading his thoughts. "Speaking only Japanese isn't about clinging to tradition. In a world where English is treated as the language of power, where everyone expects others to adjust, I wanted the opposite. I wanted to see who would step toward me, who had the empathy, the patience, the kindness to see a person instead of an inconvenience. And today, Mr. Hale, you were the only one who passed." Her smile now carried more than gratitude, it was recognition, kinship. The conversation ended there, though its echo remained. Naomi rose and left the lounge as quietly as she had entered. No demands, no accusations. Clarissa Vance, relieved, convinced herself the matter was over. At worst, she thought, a minor complaint would be logged. She could not have been more mistaken. 2 weeks later, news shook the entire hospitality world. The Atoria Grand Hotel Group had gained a new investor. A controlling stake had been purchased by Takahara Technologies, and its CEO, Mrs. Naomi Takahara, was joining the board of directors. Clarissa nearly dropped her newspaper as she read, her fingers trembling. The very guest she had brushed off like a nuisance in her own lobby was now one of the most powerful voices in the corporation. The kind of voice that could determine her fate with a single word. At the first board meeting Naomi attended, held in the Atoria's most lavish conference room, Clarissa was required to present as branch manager. Her heart thundered as she entered, desperately avoiding Naomi's gaze. Yet there she was, seated beside the chairman, composed and commanding. Reports droned on until finally the chairman turned to her. "Mrs. Takahara, as our newest board member, and with your expertise in customer experience, do you have any observations on our current operations?" This was the moment Clarissa had dreaded. Naomi smiled politely, but her eyes gleamed like blades as they fixed on Clarissa. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I do. My remarks come from a recent personal experience in this very hotel." She recounted the incident in the lobby 2 weeks prior. She named no one but laid out the facts: a guest unable to communicate in English, a manager who responded with impatience and disdain, and a custodian who resolved the matter with empathy and kindness. "The issue," Naomi declared, her voice carrying through the boardroom, "was not language. The issue was service culture. We operate an international hotel chain, yet we penalize employees who demonstrate cross-cultural skills while rewarding managers who rely on authority instead of compassion." Then, without warning, she turned directly to Clarissa. "Miss Vance, do you truly believe that exiling a capable employee to scrub floors simply because he outperformed you qualifies as sound management?" A heavy silence dropped. All eyes fixed on Clarissa, whose face had gone pale. She sat frozen, unable to answer. "This incident reveals a deep flaw in our system," Naomi continued, turning back to the board. "We don't just need managers who can balance figures. We need leaders who can understand people." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Therefore, I propose creating a new role: Vice President of Service Quality and Guest Culture. This office will retrain our staff, establish new cross-cultural standards, and ensure that every guest is treated with respect, no matter their origin or language." The chairman nodded eagerly. "A brilliant idea. And do you already have someone in mind for this role, Mrs. Takahara?" Her lips curved into a triumphant smile. "Yes. That person is Mr. Daniel Hale." The name struck the room like an explosion. He's not only armed with an exceptional academic record in cultural linguistics from a distinguished university, she declared, but more crucially, he has consistently shown integrity, empathy, and the ability to manage crises, even from the humblest position in this organization. He is the one who truly understands what needs to change. The decision came swiftly. Daniel was appointed on the spot. In that moment, his dignity was restored, and he was handed the authority to reshape the very culture of the hotel. When the boardroom finally emptied, only the chairman, Mrs. Takahara, and a stunned Clarissa lingered. "That was masterfully done, Mrs. Takahara," murmured the chairman. She merely dipped her head, her eyes fixed on Clarissa. I never intended to dismiss her, she said coolly. That would have been far too simple. She rose, moving with deliberate grace until she stood before Clarissa, who could not bring herself to move. Miss Vance, Mrs. Takahara's voice cut like ice. You are not being let go. Clarissa's head snapped up, hope flashing in her eyes. Instead, Takahara continued, you will remain here, under the direct supervision of the new vice president, Mr. Daniel Hale. The words hung in the air, sharp as blades. Every day you will learn from him how a guest must be treated. You will follow the very policies he designs. And you will witness the man you once cast aside rise above you, earning the respect of all within these walls. She leaned in, her whisper sharp enough to wound. That, Miss Vance, is your true punishment, but also your path to redemption. Now get to work under your new superior. With that, Mrs. Takahara turned sharply and left, while Clarissa stood frozen in the icy silence of the boardroom. 6 months later, the lobby of the Atoria Grand Hotel felt reborn. Not because of its marble floors or glittering chandeliers, but because of its spirit. The oppressive air was gone, replaced with warmth and efficiency that flowed through every encounter. At the front desk, employees now wore polished name tags. Beneath each name, a row of small flags displayed the languages they could speak. It was one of Daniel Hale's earliest innovations. Dressed in a crisp, tailored suit instead of the custodian's gray uniform, Daniel moved through the grand lobby with ease. He didn't carry himself as an overseer but as a gracious host welcoming guests into his own home. He chatted in French with an elderly couple, then paused to help a porter adjust luggage. Staff greeted him with admiration, not fear. Good morning, Mr. Vice President. A young clerk called cheerfully. Daniel returned the smile. Please, just Daniel. His life had flourished. He had moved into a larger apartment filled with sunlight, perfect for Charlotte's piano practice. His schedule was demanding, yet flexible enough that he never missed a school recital. For the first time in years, he could breathe easily. The glass doors of the hotel slid open, and Mrs. Naomi Takahara entered. Gone was her severe boardroom attire. Instead, she wore a wisteria-colored silk dress and carried a neatly wrapped gift in washi paper. Daniel-san, she called warmly. Takahara-san, he greeted, smiling as he approached. You're early. I couldn't wait to taste the lotus tea you mentioned, she said, offering him the package. And this is for Charlotte, a Kochi doll. I hope she treasures it. She will, Daniel replied softly. Thank you. They were no longer investor and employee, but friends. She visited often now, not to oversee but to share tea, to hear stories of change, and to celebrate Charlotte's small victories. As they turned toward the tea lounge, a weary German family entered the lobby, struggling with broken English. The receptionist, calm and steady, asked them to wait a moment. Daniel instinctively stepped forward, but stopped when he noticed something. Clarissa, who had been quietly observing nearby, was already moving. Her expression carried no irritation, only focus. Instead of stumbling through fragments of German, she turned to a colleague whose name tag bore a German flag. Mark, could you assist these guests, please? Mark bowed politely and began speaking to the family in fluent German. Their tired faces softened into gratitude. Clarissa stayed just long enough to see things resolved, then quietly stepped back, drawing no attention to herself. Naomi Takahara watched intently. She didn't just see Daniel anymore. She saw an entire system thriving. Clarissa, once scornful, now professional, applying the very structure Daniel had built. A young staff member confidently bridging cultures. And Daniel, not just a mediator now, but the architect of an environment grounded in empathy. The guest's gratitude, Clarissa's quiet precision, and Daniel's contented glance. All were fruit from the seed she had planted. Naomi Takahara smiled, reaffirming what she had always believed. The most important language, in the end, is always spoken from the heart.